So picture this, it's the spring of 1940. France has one of the biggest, most powerful armies on the planet. And just 6 weeks later, it was completely defeated. How on earth did that happen so fast? Well, this single event totally changed the course of World War II. And today, we're going to unpack exactly how it all went down.
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to start with a whole new way of fighting that caught everyone off guard. Then, we'll look at the surprise attack nobody saw coming. After that, we'll dive into the tech that made it all possible. And finally, we'll get into the really dramatic stuff, a miraculous escape and France's ultimate surrender.
You see, the battle for France wasn't really just about soldiers and guns. It was a showdown between two completely different ways of thinking about war. You had one side stuck in the past, still thinking about World War I, and another side that was built for speed in the future.
So the Germans rolled out this new strategy they called Blitzkrieg, which literally translates to lightning war. And it was the exact opposite of that slow, grinding trench warfare from the First World War. The idea was pretty simple. Focus all your power on one weak spot, hit them hard and fast, punch a hole right through their lines, and then just cause chaos behind them.
This slide really just nails the two totally opposite game plans. On one side, you've got Germany planning for a quick, decisive knockout punch. And on the other, you have France betting everything on defense, building this huge, long wall of forts called the Maginot Line.
And this Maginot Line was incredible. We're talking massive forts with huge guns, all connected by underground tunnels. But, and this is a huge but, it had one massive weakness. It just stopped. It didn't cover a big, dense forest called the Ardennes. It was like building a fortress with an unbreakable front door, but leaving a giant window wide open.
So what did the Germans do? Well, instead of trying to smash their heads against that super strong front door, they aimed their entire attack right at that open window, the Ardennes Forest.
Now, you have to understand, French military leaders were absolutely convinced this forest was a natural shield. They thought no way can an army get through there, especially not with tanks. The hills are too steep, the woods are too thick, so they didn't really bother defending it very heavily.
But where the French saw an impassable barrier, the Germans saw a secret passageway. They'd actually practiced moving their tanks and trucks through tough terrain. And so, under the cover of darkness, thousands of vehicles crept through the forest, totally bypassing the big French forts and getting ready to pop out where nobody expected them.
Okay, so this incredible speed wasn't just about driving fast or being sneaky. The whole Blitzkrieg idea really hinged on two key pieces of technology that gave the Germans a massive, massive advantage. First, you had their air force, the Luftwaffe, and its job was way bigger than just dropping bombs. It was there to terrify the soldiers on the ground, to smash communication lines so enemy troops couldn't get new orders, and of course, to own the sky.
And they had this one especially terrifying trick. Their dive bombers, called Stukas, had these sirens bolted onto them. So when they dove, they let out this horrifying, screaming wail. It was pure psychological warfare, designed to make soldiers panic and break their will to fight before the ground battle even started.
The second advantage, and this might be the most important one, was the radio. Almost every single German tank had a two-way radio. This meant commanders could talk to each other, change plans on the fly, and coordinate their attacks instantly. The French tanks? Most of them had no radios at all. They had to use flags or hand signals, which is basically impossible in the chaos of battle. The Germans were a connected, fast-moving team. The French were a collection of individuals fighting blind.
Okay, so you've got this surprise attack, combined with this superior technology, and when you put them together, it led to an absolute catastrophe for the French and British armies.
The breaking point came at a city called Sedan. Using smoke screens for cover, German engineers crossed the wide Meuse River in just a few hours. The French thought that move should have taken days. As soon as they got their portable bridges up, the tanks just poured across, tearing a giant hole right through the French defensive line. That was it. That was the turning point.
And they didn't stop. They didn't get bogged down fighting for every little town. Nope, the German tank divisions just floored it, racing hundreds of miles straight for the coast. Their one and only goal was to get to the English Channel and trap the best of the British and French armies, cutting them off from the rest of France.
This mad dash to the sea created one of the most desperate and legendary moments of the entire war. You now have hundreds of thousands of Allied soldiers trapped with their backs to the ocean on the beaches of a little town called Dunkirk.
I mean, just picture it. They were totally surrounded. The German army was closing in on one side, and on the other was just the sea. There was no way to fight their way out. So the British government put out an emergency call for anyone with the boat, to help.
And what happened next was, well, it was nothing short of a miracle. A whole fleet of little civilian boats, fishing boats, yachts, ferries, you name it, they sailed from England across the dangerous channel. While being attacked by German planes, these little boats rescued over 330,000 soldiers right off the beaches. It was an absolute military disaster, but it was an incredible human miracle.
So, while they managed to save the men at Dunkirk, they had to leave everything else behind. All their tanks, all their trucks, all their big guns, just left on the beaches. With its best armies gone and its defenses smashed, France's fate was pretty much sealed.
To keep the historic, beautiful city from being totally destroyed in a battle, the French government made a painful choice. They declared Paris an open city, which meant they wouldn't defend it. And in June 1940, German soldiers marched down its famous avenues without a single shot being fired. The fall of Paris was a huge psychological blow, not just for France, but for the whole world.
France was forced to sign an armistice, which is a formal agreement to stop fighting. And in a final, calculated act of revenge, the Germans made the French leaders sign the surrender papers in the exact same railway car where Germany had been forced to surrender at the end of World War I. It was pure humiliation.
And the terms of that surrender were brutal. Germany would now occupy all of northern and western France. The powerful French army had to be completely disarmed. And on top of all that, France was forced to pay for the cost of the German soldiers who were now occupying their country.
For regular people, life changed literally overnight. Suddenly there were German soldiers on every corner. Strict curfews meant you had to be inside at night. Food became really scarce and was heavily rationed. All the newspapers and radio stations were controlled by the Germans, and you lived in constant fear that if you spoke out, you could be arrested.
So in the end, the fall of France was this shocking wake-up call for the entire world. It proved that a new, faster idea, backed by the right technology, could totally overwhelm a much larger, established power that was just too slow to adapt. And it leaves us with a really interesting question that's still relevant today. Where else, in history or even right now, do we see that same idea, speed and innovation, winning out against raw strength?